Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Invertebrate Investigations. I'm your host, Kayla, and I have a very exciting topic for you this month. This is my favorite invertebrate and my favorite animal at Butterfly Pavilion. So today we are talking about the incredible horseshoe crab. They are I think adorable. They're a little bit weird. They're sometimes called living fossils. So today we're going to talk a little bit about their natural history, go over their anatomy, and we're going to talk a little bit about why they're important for our ecosystems and why I love them so much. So before we get started though, make sure that you are subscribed to Butterfly Pavilion's channel. We have the best sorts of notifications for cute animals for you to see. So I'm going to do my best to keep us under 15 minutes today, but again, these are my favorite animals, so I may ramble. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's stay on track. So there are 4 species of horseshoe crabs that can be found in the world. The 3 of them, the mangrove horseshoe crab, the tri-spine, and the coastal horseshoe crab, they are all found in Southeast Asia. North America, we only have 1 species and they're only found on the East Coast. So they are the Atlantic horseshoe crab. They all look pretty similar. Mangrove horseshoe crabs are a little bit smaller. Tri-spines, they keep their spines as adults instead of losing them. All juveniles do have these little spines, look like little mohawks. But for the most part, we're looking at pretty much the same anatomy, same behavior. And one thing to keep in mind about horseshoe crabs is they are not actually crabs. Because they live in the ocean and they have a shell, they get called crabs, but they are actually more closely related to spiders. So if you're a taxonomy nerd like me, it can kind of help to see this visualized. So we're going to look at arthropods. So these are animals with an exoskeleton. And under arthropods, we have hexapods, which will be your insects. Myriapods, which are going to be your centipedes and your millipedes. Crustaceans, so crabs, lobsters, shrimp. And then we have Chelicerata, which are a little stranger. Usually most people are like, what is Chelicerata? What are chelicerates? So Chelicerata then splits off into 2 different branches where we have the Xiphoshura, which are horseshoe crabs, and then we have arachnids, which are spiders, scorpions, mites, and ticks. So again, if we're looking at, think of this like a family tree. Horseshoe crabs and spiders were cousins, distant cousins. Crustaceans, though, even further. So despite the fact that we are called crabs, they are not actually crabs. And horseshoe crabs have been on this planet for about 445 million years. That's as far back as the fossil record goes. They are one of the earliest invertebrates that we are able to find. They show up not too long after the Cambrian explosion. And you can see in these fossils, we look pretty similar. We don't look all that different from modern horseshoe crabs. You can see we've got our carapace here, and then there appears to be indications of a tail. If we jump forward in time a little bit, go about 150 million years ago, again, you can see this looks exactly like a modern horseshoe crab. Now, one of my favorite facts, if you are in Colorado and you visit Dinosaur Ridge, they have preserved horseshoe crab tracks. So Colorado, we're a really dry area, but once upon a time we were under the ocean. And during that time, horseshoe crabs were tootling around here. So if you are in Colorado, get a chance to go to Dinosaur Ridge, definitely do it, not just to see the horseshoe crab tracks. But I just think that's really special that even though we don't have a whole lot of water here anymore, certainly nowhere near the ocean, horseshoe crabs were still around here in Colorado. So let's look at our modern horseshoe crab. So this is an Atlantic horseshoe crab. We currently have 3 adult males in our collection, and if you visit Butterfly Pavilion, they are in our touch tanks, so you can pet them. Quick anatomy. They have this strong, tough carapace that helps protect them. They are kind of built like little tanks. It's a hinged shell, so at the seam right here, they can hinge and flex their bodies. They've got some protective spines back here on their back. They're not super sharp. Obviously, if you stepped on one with bare feet at the beach, that's not going to feel great. But there is no real way for them to harm us. And then we have the telson or the tail. And so that tail has a couple different functions. It can help them steer while they're swimming. It helps them dig. They almost use it like a windshield wiper to move sand out of the way. And they also have photoreceptors on their tails. So horseshoe crabs, despite being ancient animals, which sometimes implies that they are simple animals, they actually have 10 eyes total. So we have our compound eyes. Those are the two eyes, very visible, and they actually have pretty decent vision out of these eyes. But they also have photoreceptors or light receptors. There's a couple right here on the front of their shell. There are some on the underside, and then they have them along their tails. And again, these are simple eyes, really just going to be able to see light, shadow, and movement. But if you've ever seen the horseshoe crabs at Butterfly Pavilion or in another aquarium, when they nap, they like to shove their faces in the sand. They will bury themselves, but usually leave their tails out of the sand. So they are very well camouflaged. If you're not looking for them, you might just think it's a stick or something like that, a rock. And that way they are able to kind of know what's going on around them. They'll know if predators are present, be able to see light, shadow, anything like that, so that when they're ready to wake up and pop out, they know whether or not they've got a safe space. And horseshoe crabs are extremely important for a couple of reasons. One, they are detritivores. They're actually omnivores. They will eat just about anything. They are part of our cleanup crew. So they will scavenge dead things, but they will also eat worms and slugs and small crustaceans. So they're helping keep the oceans clean, but they are also a food source for a number of animals. And I jumped ahead of myself. We forgot to go over the underside anatomy. So when you flip them over, they look kind of creepy, kind of scary. We've got a bunch of legs, a bunch of spines. What's going on here? So they have 5 pairs of legs. The males will have these little claspers. So that's how you can tell the males from the females. We've got a male over here on the right, female on the left. Their mouth is in the center right here. And they don't really have teeth. They kind of just use their claws and their mouth to crush stuff up. I actually have been nibbled on by a horseshoe crab. It kind of feels like steel wool or a rough sponge. It doesn't hurt. They're pretty much harmless to humans. And then we have their book gills right here. And if you are familiar with spider anatomy, that looks very, very similar to a spider's book lungs. Just they are external. And then these little claws right here will be their chelicerae. So just like spiders, they have those 2 front limbs, those shorter limbs. They use them for the exact same thing. It helps them put food in their mouth, so they can grab with these. And then their feet right here, again, they look really spiny. They don't really pinch. They can kind of flex those their toes and kind of grab at you, but again, they aren't able to hurt you in any way. There is I haven't been able to verify if this is accurate or not, but there is kind of an urban legend that H.R. Geiger, in the creation of the Creatures for the Alien franchise, based the facehuggers, the juvenile aliens, off of horseshoe crabs. So that's kind of what people think of when they see them. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to eat your face. They really just want to hang out on the beach, eat worms, and do their thing. All right, now let's get back to the conservation and why they are important. So, if you live on the East Coast, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic, you might start seeing lots and lots of horseshoe crabs coming up on the beach to breed. So peak breeding season is about May to June. So again, if you are in Delaware, Maryland, maybe Virginia, all the way down to Florida, you might start seeing lots and lots of horseshoe crabs coming up on the beach. They come up on the beach just like sea turtles to lay their eggs. And so they're coming up on the beach. They're looking for mates. Sometimes you will see a female with multiple males who are kind of hanging off her tail. And she will drag them around. She will dig a little burrow. She'll lay the eggs. And then a male or multiple males will go and fertilize those eggs. And they head back in the ocean. Baby horseshoe crabs will come out, and they have to, just like baby sea turtles, make that little run for the ocean. But there is a bird species called the red knot that actually bases their migration around horseshoe crab breeding season. So they will, these birds are quite the travelers. They will travel from Canada all the way down to the very tip of South America, and they pop off in Delaware Bay to get a snack. They like to eat horseshoe crab eggs. And without these eggs and this little kind of like pit stop for them, these birds would have nothing to eat. And so, it's not just horseshoe crabs when we're conserving. There are lots of other animals that rely on them, especially these red knots. So again, if you are on the East Coast, kind of central Atlantic area, you may start seeing lots of red knots showing up as they are heading to their breeding season up in Canada. But horseshoe crabs are also important for us. So horseshoe crabs do have blue blood, and it is used in medical applications. So they have a protein in their blood called limulus amoebocyte lysate, or LAL. I know this is a lot of text on the screen, but we'll just go through it. So it is, this compound will react with bacterial endotoxins. And if you use any sort of injectable medication, whether that's insulin, whether you're getting vaccines, or any other medication that needs to go into your body, if there are bacterial endotoxins in that medication, you can, you have fever, shock, even death. So this is pretty serious. And the horseshoe crab blood will react to any endotoxins present in that medication and let us know if it has been contaminated. We used to actually use rabbits for this, whereas we would just inject the medication into the rabbit, and if it died, then we know it's contaminated if it didn't die. So starting in 1977, we started using horseshoe crabs for this. We do draw blood from them. The intent is to not kill them, right? Because we want them to survive. There is a reported mortality rate of about 15 to 30% of horseshoe crabs who go through this procedure. So I know that using animals in medical contexts is controversial, and it can be a difficult topic to think about. However, one, the horseshoe crabs and their blood used in our medications has saved hundreds of thousands of lives. If you've ever had a vaccine, that vaccine, that was safe because of horseshoe crab blood. If you use insulin or any other injectable medication, or medical implants as well, things like pacemakers, we know that is safe because of horseshoe crab blood. And because they are so important in the biomedical industry, there are protections against them for overfishing. So there are policies around how many horseshoe crabs can be harvested for bait and how many can be harvested for medical uses. And there is quite a bit of money that medical companies put back into their conservation. So there is a synthetic LAL that has been approved for use in Europe. It's not been approved in the United States. And again, testing on animals, that's a difficult conversation. That's a difficult topic. But as of right now, a lot of horseshoe crab conservation funding is there because of their importance to the biomedical industry. And if we switch to a synthetic, yes, we won't be harvesting these crabs for their blood anymore, but also a lot of that funding disappears. So like all conservation issues, it's not as cut and dried as anything, but if you are curious about learning more about this, I highly recommend you do some research, and maybe one day we will be at a place where we can use that synthetic and still have the funding and the government protections for these amazing animals. So why are they my favorite? They are kind of weird animals, maybe a little scary, not sure about them. So why are they my favorite? So one, the remarkable ancient history. Again, these animals have been on Earth for almost 500 million years. They've survived multiple extinction events, and I just think that's incredible, right? They've been on this planet longer than trees have. They were around before dinosaurs, and so I just think that's really cool that they're still hanging around. Also, they're weird. That's kind of the appeal for me. I work at the bug zoo. I like weird animals, but the fact that they are weird and strange and kind of odd is actually really appealing to me. And they need our help. So in addition to being used in the biomedical industry, they are facing all the same other challenges that other animals are dealing with. So losing their habitat, especially the beaches where they breed, climate change, ocean acidification, all of those things affect them. They are fairly adaptable, and they can handle changing ocean temperatures a lot better than some other animals, but everything has a limit. So they do need to be protected. And also, they are just really cute. And if you disagree with me, I have proof. So, this is a video of one of our baby horseshoe crabs. We have a few who live at Butterfly Pavilion, and when we first got them, these little guys were so excited to be in their tank that they would just swim everywhere. And so they don't tend to swim as much. They've gotten a little bit bigger. Maybe it's a little bit tough for them, but they flip upside down and they kind of just wave their feet to swim. And it's extremely ineffective method of locomotion, but it is so cute. And look at their tiny little feet. They're just precious. And again, you can see the juveniles, they have those little spines on their backs. So I have a couple other videos for you. Here they are, hanging out in their tank, climbing around. When you come to Butterfly Pavilion, if you're here first thing in the morning, you may catch them when they're active, but the rest, usually around like 11 a.m., noon, they take a nap. And so they're not doing a whole lot. So sometimes you don't always catch them when they're doing something interesting, but they're actually really playful. They live in a tank with some hermit crabs right now. We did just post on our socials. We caught a video of one of our hermit crabs riding one of the horseshoe crabs around, because why crawl when you can just catch a horseshoe crab taxi? So if you happen to be in Colorado, want to come check out our amazing horseshoe crabs, even give them a little pet, you can do that. If you are on the East Coast, keep an eye out if you're on the beach. Now, usually, I encourage people to not interact with wildlife. However, if you catch a horseshoe crab on its back on the beach, you can give them a helping hand. So in the water, they can flip themselves over pretty easily. It's not the most graceful of flipping over, but they can do that. However, if they're on land and they are stuck on their back, you can give them a hand. So just pick them up on either side of their shell. They'll probably start flexing, they'll start kicking, and you can just help them flip over and gently make their way back into the ocean. So, if you do find one who's stuck or struggling, feel free to, pop in and interfere. In this case, they can't hurt you, and as long as you pick them up on either side of their shell. We don't want to pick them up by the tail or like have them, dangling by a leg, but you can handle them safely and help them back into the ocean. All right. Well, thank you all so much. I did not quite keep it under 15 minutes. I tried my best. So sorry. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to me ramble about horseshoe crabs. Next month, we have an exciting topic. For Pride Month, we're going to go over its basic biology. We're going to be getting into some interesting reproductive methods, as well as kind of challenging that whole gender essentialism thing of its basic biology, right? You just have male, female. Invertebrates say not so much. So that will be, let me double check the date. I don't want to tell y'all wrong. I will be back on June 16th at 11 a.m. If you missed that, again, you can always